Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron, and today we are doing a review of the Emerald Physics CS2Ps. And folks, we got a lot to cover, so let's get this ball rolling. The CS2P is an open baffle speaker that uses two 15-inch Eminence Alpha 15As for mid-range and bass duty, and a 12-inch treble waveguide connected to the compression tweeter. Impedance for this speaker is rated at 4 ohms, and the speaker sensitivity is 93 decibels. Rated frequency response comes in between 40 Hz and 20,000 Hz within a 3 decibel range of the target curve. The speaker uses an external crossover, which is pretty simple to set up. Just make sure your treble output terminal is connected to the top posts of the speakers and the woofer terminal is connected to the bottom. Easy as that, folks. Fit and finish for this model was pretty good with a couple of blemishes, but after a quick email to Mark, I was informed that the process has changed and you can expect better results at this point in time. I've had the CS2Ps in-house for quite some time and I have played a lot of material. I'm at a point where, listening to the CS2Ps, I feel like I'm putting on a comfortable pair of shoes, meaning I know exactly how these things sound, and I believe that I'm at a point where, with great confidence, I can kind of help you navigate in understanding how these speakers will perform and whether or not they're going to be a good option for you. In regards to Soundstage, the recommendation from Emerald Physics on setting these speakers up properly to get the best performance out of them would be, considering the fact that these are open baffle speakers, they would say to pull them out into the room a minimum of 2 feet from the back wall and 1 to 2 feet from the side wall. It's been my experience that the reality is that I think that you need to be quite a bit more aggressive with these particular speakers. I found that, for me, pulling these out a minimum, honestly, of 3 feet or more from the back wall as well as the side walls gave me the best soundstage that I could get out of these speakers. Getting more specific about the soundstage, I actually found that in our relatively smaller room, this is only 14 by 13 feet, that doing a corner loading configuration with the speakers definitely gave us the best soundstage. What I mean by corner loading is basically aligning these at a 45-degree angle so they're positioned from the corners pointing right at the actual listener. So when it comes to the performance of these speakers in regards to soundstage, I'm going to say that as soon as you do have the ability to pull these out from the side walls, from the back walls, in our case, like I said, corner loading them, I was really impressed with the soundstage of the CS2Ps. I would say that it is definitely one of its strongest attributes. There's no doubt about that. Going along with the company's slogan of almost live, the vast majority of the folks that I've had over to listen to these speakers, that was something that a lot of people said over and over and over again was, man, this sounds like a live performance. This actually sounds as if I'm actually there. So whether or not that's the magic of specifically open baffle or if it's just this particular speaker, I can't really say because I don't have a lot of experience with open baffle speakers. But I will say that as long as you take the time and setting these up correctly, getting them off of those side walls and those back walls, you will be greeted with a soundstage that, in my opinion, is going to be tough to beat. No doubt about that. All right, so let's talk about bass. With the CS2Ps, if you are, if you're the kind of listener where you like to, crank up the volume, sit down on the couch, and you can actually, feel the bass. It's coming through the walls, it's coming through the floors, it's coming up through your legs and into your chest, and the couch is shaking, and the walls are shaking, and the windows are rattling, and you look over and your wife is shaking, or your husband is shaking, or whatever, and you're like, whoa, we're on the Titanic, this is awesome. Listen, the CS2Ps are not designed to do that, okay? So I had a really good friend of mine that came over, and I thought this was a good opportunity to watch some movies. He's a big cinema buff, and it was really interesting. He said, Ron, I've heard home theater in a boxes with a dedicated subwoofer that I was enjoying what I was hearing more than these speakers. And I was like, well, either you're deaf or you might be onto something. It's important that we understand and that we establish that with an open baffle speaker, well, there is no box. So in a traditional design where that box is, firmly planted on the ground and it's making contact with the ground, when that bass hits and that energy is all, trying to get out of that speaker, it's going to use anything and everything in order to disperse that energy. With an open baffle design, it has the entire room to work with and there is no box. So the bottom line is this: if you want to be able to experience and feel the energy of bass, the CS2P is not going to deliver the goods. You're going to have to consider possibly looking at a dedicated subwoofer, and that's going to be an added expense, and it's something that you're going to have to take into consideration if you decide to move forward with these speakers. Jumping into mid-range, if there is one thing that I liked the most about the CS2Ps, it would definitely be the mid-range. My wife, Sarah, and I definitely agree that when you're talking about very specific material, female vocals, we listen to Norah Jones, we listen to Madeline Peru, we listen to Lake Street Dive, all female vocalists, and we really liked the performance of the CS2Ps with that particular material. When we tried some other stuff, like some rock and roll, I think that we put on Jack White's Blunderbuss, we didn't necessarily feel the same. We felt like, if anything, that perhaps with the male vocals, they sounded a little bit thin. There just wasn't the angst and the passion that we heard with other equipment or speakers, such as the Anthony Gallo 3.1s. There just seemed to be, for us, something lacking when it came to that style of music. So I would say that even though I definitely appreciated the mid-range on this, I did find it to be a little bit picky in regards to what actual material that you're playing out of the speakers. So getting into treble. The Emerald Physics CS2P is using this compression driver. And if there is, to be honest with you, one thing about these speakers that I had the hardest time with, it would be their performance in the treble arena. I would say that I was just really hoping for and looking for a bit more detail. Keep in mind that with the Anthony Gallo 3.1s, that tweeter is known to be extremely analytical and extremely detailed, and it's one of the strengths of that particular speaker, and it's something that I really enjoy. I'm a detail freak, and that was the first thing that I was kind of let down with on these particular speakers, is when I was listening to a lot of the material that I've heard many, many times, and I'm waiting to hear some of that detail. I didn't catch it as much with these speakers, and I would say that, that kind of led me to believe that perhaps if you're the type of listener that doesn't care so much about getting into the analytical side of the spectrum, the hyper detail, and you're okay with a speaker that is perhaps 2 notches on the warmer side of the audio spectrum, they could definitely still be a good fit for you. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is I did have one particular listener that came over that listened to these speakers that he actually felt like the top end was perhaps harsh and brittle and kind of squawky at times, to the point where he even had a hard time and actually felt like it was very unpleasant to listen to these speakers. So while I haven't necessarily experienced that myself, I would say that if you find yourself being very sensitive to treble and to the top end of a speaker, I would really encourage you to try to audition these before you make any kind of commitments to actually purchase them. The last thing that I want to celebrate about the CS2Ps would be dynamics. Now, as long as you have a good understanding of what I had to say about the bass, meaning that you can't necessarily feel the bass, to the extent that you might be able to with a traditional box design. One of the things that I liked about these speakers the most, as well as a lot of listeners that came over and heard these speakers, was dynamics. I played actually a classical piece where it's really well recorded, and as the noise floor increases and that, you know, that symphony is really starting to gas out and they're really starting to, you know, throw some serious punches your way, these speakers, they didn't skip a beat. And in my opinion, they actually put my gallows to shame in regards to how dynamic they were able to really capture this big, giant, beautiful music, throw it in your face, and honestly, there were a lot of reactions with people that were listening to this going, wow, whoa, that was intense. And that's exactly how I feel about these in regards to dynamics. They are fantastic and definitely one of my favorite things about these speakers, hands down. I'd like to thank Walter and Mark from Emerald Physics for sending out the CS2Ps. Guys, I really appreciate it. So where do we go from here? One of my good friends, after we listened to a lot of material with these speakers, he made this comment. He said, "Ron, I feel like these speakers don't have an identity." That really struck me, and I thought initially, man, that is really harsh. When I've been doing this review and I've been thinking about it a lot more, that comment keeps coming back. And I'm going to say it a little bit differently. It's not that these speakers don't have an identity. I think what it is that because of their design being an open baffle speaker, perhaps these speakers belong to a niche market. And they're not going to be for everybody. You have to consider the fact that we're approaching $3,000 for these speakers. They're giant. You got to get them out into the room, you know, before they really start to sing. So this is a serious investment, and I think that Emerald Physics knows this. I would again encourage you that if you have the chance to be able to, you know, sign up for a show and hear these things for yourself, I would really seriously consider doing exactly that. Thank you so much for stopping by. We definitely appreciate it. Send us the comments, shoot us the emails. You guys know the drill. Take it easy. Peace.
Yeah, it's so realistic and lifelike, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's the closest I've ever heard of actually being at a concert.
Did it feel like it was filling up the entire room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every sound of every instrument comes from a different place.
I've heard that song in concert.
Yeah.
And
So you have something to use as
that's
a
what I'm
basis.
gauging it by.
Yeah.
And it does bring out all the highs and lows, and
Yeah.
sounds awesome.
The slogan for this company is almost live.
Yeah, I would say that
They're spot on.
that felt live.
It's missing the whole undertones, the big carrying, rumbling. Yeah, it doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
I can hear the clarity.
Yeah.
It doesn't lose any distortion in things like the raindrops and the conversations.
Yeah.
But all the massive and size of a scene
Yeah.
like this is gone. And even with the tweeters, honestly, on the highs, they're not the crisp clear that I would expect to hear out of a really high end speaker.
Holy cow. Man, that was incredible. I mean, I was expecting to hear like things breaking up at that volume. Right?
Yeah.
But it sounded clear and awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what instrument there was.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just the low end of the piano, but
Yeah.
I was expecting more low end.
That was crazy. Man. Like even like your visual a little bit. I guess
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like it overcomes your other senses.
Yeah.
Like, you can't even focus on anything. Like the music is just like pay attention to me.